The steel simply couldn't stand it, melted, collapsed on itself, and then simply collapsed floor by floor down to the bottom. So we will pause for a few seconds while some stations on the eastern part of the United States go to local news. ABC News is staying right here.
This is WTVO, Channel 17 News at 10. News where you live.
Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror.
The president addresses a nation in terror after one of the darkest days in American history. That's our top story. Good evening. I'm Stu Stottleman.
And I'm Christina Pearson. Tonight, President Bush addressed the nation. The president promised to commit the full resources of the nation's intelligence and law enforcement communities to find the terrorists and bring them to justice. New York's trademark towers have been reduced to rubble after 2 hijacked planes crashed through them. At the Pentagon in Washington, fire officials are still fighting the flames and finding victims. Tonight, we will have full coverage on today's tragic events. We'll also be taking a look at how it's affecting prices at the gas pumps, plus how local hospitals are getting ready to pitch in if needed. And because of today's events, tonight's newscast will be commercial-free.
We begin tonight with a terror in New York. ABC's John Berman has the latest.
September 11th will be known as the day that the face of America changed forever. But with the Pentagon still burning, President Bush told the world that the spirit of America will not be shaken.
These acts shatter steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve.
The president, who had a whirlwind day that took him to secured sites in Louisiana and Nebraska, made clear that the U.S. is committed to finding anyone involved in any way to these attacks.
I've directed the full resources of our intelligence and law enforcement communities to find those responsible and to bring them to justice. We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them.
The nightmare began just before 9 a.m. American Flight 11, a Boeing 767 from Boston to Los Angeles, crashed into one of the twin towers of the World Trade Center. Then, 10 minutes later, the second plane, a United flight also from Boston to Los Angeles, crashed into the second tower. The Twin Towers, a symbol of American economic power, stood wounded in the morning sky. Then, they stood no more.
A huge explosion now raining debris on all of us. We better get out of the way!
Just after 10 o'clock, as thousands of terrified people watched from the streets, the South Tower collapsed. 20 minutes later, the second tower came down.
Oh my God, there it goes!
All of a sudden I heard rumbling and we all started running away from it. The glass blew out and threw me onto the sidewalk, and I couldn't see for 20 seconds.
As New York was struck by tragedy, so too was the nation's capital. Another plane crashed into the Pentagon. Later, part of the building collapsed. And in western Pennsylvania, a fourth plane, a United Airlines flight from Newark to San Francisco, went down in a field. The flights were all hijacked. Officials say they were taken by people wielding knives. Several passengers on these flights were able to place cell phone calls to authorities and loved ones, describing the situation before they went down. The casualties from the disaster are not yet known, but they are believed to be in the thousands. Many firefighters and police who rushed to the World Trade Center after the first crash are missing. Rescue officials have begun to receive calls from people still alive, trapped in the rubble. New York's mayor, Rudy Giuliani, has closed Lower Manhattan tomorrow to give the rescue effort the space it needs. The rest of the city will remain open, but the mayor has asked people to stay home if they can. It will be some time before this city, called the capital of the world, returns to normal or anything close. John Berman, ABC News, New York.
Of course, Washington felt the blows today, too, as a commercial jet plowed into the Pentagon.
ABC's Lisa Sylvester has that story.
A solemn President Bush returns to the White House, where the flag has been lowered to half staff. The president, hoping to soothe the nation, promised to go after the people who are responsible.
These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into chaos and retreat. But they have failed. Our country is strong. A great people has been moved to defend a great nation.
It's hard to articulate the collective grief and defiance of the nation after so many lives have been lost.
It came streaking down and hit
and it hit short. It didn't go into the top of the Pentagon. It came like in short, and then everything sprayed up like a fireball sprayed up on the wall.
A hijacked American Airlines plane plummets into the west wall of the Pentagon, sending a tremor of fear and panic throughout the Capitol area. Terrified government workers flee as rescue crews attend to an unknown number of injured.
The attack against the United States of America today was a vicious, well-coordinated, a massive attack against the United States of America.
Less than an hour before the Pentagon attack, 2 other hijacked commercial jets plunged into the World Trade Center, leaving the Twin Towers demolished in a heap of debris and rubble. In the same hour, a hijacked United flight crashes in Pennsylvania, the plane apparently en route to attack Camp David. The assaults shut down the nation's capital, but congressional leaders in a show of support gathered determined to show that our government may have been hit, but it is not knocked down.
Our resolve has not been weakened by these horrific and cowardly acts. Congress will convene tomorrow.
It's hard not to compare this day of destruction to the day of infamy at Pearl Harbor, but with one difference. It's unclear at this point who is the enemy.
The worst part about it is there ain't nobody to fight.
President Bush held a meeting with the National Security Council to try to identify who is responsible for these attacks and to figure out what should be the U.S. government's next move. Lisa Sylvester, ABC News, Washington.
Rockford area Congressman Don Manzullo was in Washington when the hijacked commercial jet crashed into the west wing of the Pentagon.
Congressman Manzullo joins us now live by phone. Thanks for joining us, Congressman.
Yes.
Where were you during the attack?
Well, we were actually going right by the Pentagon. Had come off the George Washington Parkway, the Pentagon just a little bit behind us, and I got in my office a few minutes later and realized that the plane had hit the Pentagon about the same time that we were near it. And as soon as I saw the flames at the Pentagon from our office window, I sent my staff home and closed up our 2 district offices and got out of there. Then about 10 minutes later, there was a tremendous explosion. And we weren't quite sure what that was. And I had an aide who was going to take me to our residence in Northern Virginia when the House was in session. So we left the car there and walked about 8 or 10 blocks to the apartment of a friend and stayed there until we could figure out what was going on. But we thought at that time, as the rumors were coming that there had been an explosion on the mall, that there had been an explosion on the Senate side, we actually had heard that an airplane had gone into the Sears Tower. So we felt that the nation's capital and the nation was under tremendous attack, and we were just trying to figure out what to do at that point.
Now, we've been told that you may have attended a briefing at the White House tonight. Is that true? And if so, is there anything you can share with us as far as the information you received?
I just got back from a meeting that was at the police headquarters with the Attorney General and some people from the National Security Council, and obviously everybody's pretty tight-lipped about it. But this thing came as a complete surprise to everybody. It appears that nobody in our security agency had any clue that this was going to take place. The ironic thing about it is that the weapon of mass destruction here were box openers and small knives wielded by 3 to 4 terrorists on each of those airplanes, and with the terrorists being able to fly the planes. And I mean, there were no firearms involved, and the box openers are plastic, and they have the type of knife that goes into a regular men's razor. So, you can have all the sophisticated equipment you want, but people that intend to do things like this can obviously easily overpower somebody to get into the cabin, even with relatively small weapons.
Now, obviously, this was something that nobody would even dare think would happen here. What sort of options are there to deal with this, especially when we don't know who is responsible yet?
Here's the option. You find out who did it, and then you kill them. This is an act of war. The rules of diplomacy are suspended. And once the president finds out if in fact bin Laden is behind this, then there's an act of war against the country of Afghanistan that has harbored that animal for so many years. And that's the way it's going to have to be done. We saw where there was bombing going on in Kabul, and thought that was the Americans that had already retaliated, but in fact that wasn't the case. That was the so-called moderate tribe that's involved in the Afghan revolution. Their leader was killed about 2 days ago, and they were retaliating against bin Laden. So that's how you deal with terrorists.
Do you think you can find the culprit in this case?
Pardon?
Do you think you can find the culprits in this case?
I think so. What the National Security Council is doing and the FBI, obviously they're checking all the manifests on the airplane, seeing who in fact these people were. I mean, surprise, surprise, probably none of them used their real name. So the question is, do you really know who they are? But then they'll probably try to do some matches as to people who took training on these sophisticated jumbo jets and see if they match up with people on the passenger manifest in order to do that. One of the passengers on the plane that took off for Dulles that crashed into the Pentagon, and by the way, it's still burning. We just went by it. Flames are still shooting out of it. I had called her husband, who is the Solicitor General, twice on the cell phone, and she gave the seat designation of the terrorist and described quite in detail what was going on in the aircraft. And we subsequently learned tonight that there are several conversations that took place by cell phones from the people on the aircraft to people who are on land that describe the same thing, with 3 to 4 terrorists per plane using these very small knives and box openers.
As we saw members of Congress and its leadership gathered for a news conference, what message were you trying to send?
Well, the message is that the government's open. No matter what means any terrorists try to use, you're not going to stop the American government from taking place. I mean, this is as bad as Pearl Harbor. The light in the Capitol dome is lit. The symbol of freedom is still there, and it's important for Americans. I mean, people are going to have to get onto an airplane sooner or later for business or perhaps for pleasure, and the people are going to have confidence that the United States Congress is doing everything it can to work with every government agency to make sure that aircraft travel will be safe. So it's people just have to have confidence in the fact that this government, the people of this country, and those in leadership have the willingness and the resolve to make sure we work through this terrible tragedy.
Congressman Manzullo, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, gasoline prices are on the rise in the wake of today's terrorist attacks.
And local residents are filling up before the prices skyrocket.
WTVO Channel 17's Ryan Schultheis joins us now live from a gas station on West State Street in Rockford. Ryan, what's the price at right now?
Well, Steve and Christina, as you can see, the price is actually at $1.59 out here right now. But we've been seeing people all day lining up trying to get their gas tanks full before the prices skyrocket right out of control.
Now, at least a tank full as cheap as I can.
A lot of people had that same idea. Come in and fill up before the prices went through the roof. The Illinois Petroleum Marketers Association says the wholesale price of gas was up about 30 cents a gallon within hours of the attacks. And that makes Ginger Bree upset.
I think it's ridiculous. How can it go up in one day like that?
That question was on the mind of a lot of motorists as they got in line to fill up. But many think the prices are high enough as it is.
Gas prices are high now. Imagine then at $4 a gallon, $5 a gallon, And when you're driving a car that's got a V8 motor in there, it's crazy.
$4, $5 a gallon, could it actually happen? If the prices do end up jumping up that much, some people already have a plan in the works.
I'm going to be like walking or riding a bike or something, or with this thing, it's ridiculous, so.
Well, Steve and Christina, what we've seen today is not people getting used to this kind of gas prices. They're kind of scared of the gas prices. They've come out, they're being proactive. They're filling up their gas tanks before those prices get out of control. And we're all hoping we don't see that $5 mark a gallon for gas. So we'll keep our fingers crossed about that one. Steve, Christina, back to you.
Okay, Ryan, thank you very much.
Well, as a nation struggles to come to grips with what happened, many people have turned to prayer. Around the state line, places of worship held special services tonight. WTVO Channel 17's Chloe Friedman has details.
Give us the courage to face tomorrow.
People have turned to prayer, clasping one another and joining in song. Searching for answers, asking for help as they try to understand this tragedy.
Hear our prayer.
Families come to St. Paul's Lutheran Church.
This is our way of trying to make sense of what's going on and also to support each other.
We thought it was really important to show our support, not only for the people who lost their lives, but to pray for those who have lost near and dear friends and family.
The facts almost seem too painful.
Two planes crashed and a lot of people died.
And some may be too young to understand. But many may never be able to make sense of this terrible tragedy.
Pray for our leaders that we may have peace.
But it's services like this one that are helping some cope. Katie McFadden is just 12 years old.
Pearl Harbor happened, World War I happened, World War II happened. We made through all those three. I think we can make it through this.
In Rockford, Chloe Friedman, WTVO Channel 17 News.
Many local churches will also hold special services tomorrow.
American Muslim groups are rushing to condemn today's terror attacks. They're hoping the blame doesn't fall on people of their faith, while investigators determine who was responsible. Tonight, I talked with members of the local Muslim community.
Shocked, confused, and my heart really was with all the victims and their family.
Like any other American, but when you hear the news, like you are, when you heard the news, you are shocked and you are terrified and horrible.
Members of the Muslim Community Center in Rockford expressing their outrage at the apparent terrorist attacks. More than 500 Muslim families, originally from countries all over the world, now call Rockford home. But they say in times like this, too many Americans associate Muslims with terrorism.
When you say someone is a Muslim, he's an American, and this is his faith, this is his belief. Why should we point the fingers always to Muslims? There are the good and the bad among the followers of any belief.
If anybody does, it doesn't matter he is Muslim or not, we condemn that as a Muslim because we believe in the peace and harmony, and we believe in the freedom of and security of individuals.
Muslims in other parts of the country have suffered backlash following terrorist attacks. These men say fortunately that's not been the case in Rockford. Still, a squad car sits parked in front of the community center.
It's a protection because there's still people out there, they might, I don't know how to say it, you know.
Early reports blame the tragedy on Osama bin Laden and terrorist groups in Afghanistan associated with him. But these local Muslims warn against rushing to judgment, pointing out that foreign terrorist groups were initially blamed for the Oklahoma City bombing.
Let's be mature in our thinking. Let's wait till the investigation process takes its course and find out who that is. And I don't care who that is. You know, we strongly condemn their action, and we will be the first in line to support the severest punishment.
The Council on American Islamic Relations is cautioning followers who wear traditional clothing such as headscarves to stay out of public areas in the immediate future. It says several Muslims wearing the traditional garb have already been harassed in the Washington, D.C. area.
Families around the country watch this tragedy unfold, but today was especially difficult for those with family members who work in the vicinity of the attack. Lewis Crampton from Rockford heard about the tragedy early this morning. His 23-year-old son, Christopher, works right next to the World Trade Center. Christopher was voting in the New York primary, which delayed his arrival to work and may have saved his life.
And he went, as a good citizen would, early to vote, but it saved his life, perhaps, because there was such a long line in front of the voting machine that he had to wait.
And then actually see this, gigantic building, a symbol of America just sort of completely collapse on top of itself. The only thing that would have went through my mind was just basically sheer panic and, desire.
Christopher Crampton ran off and sought refuge on the Brooklyn Bridge. Well, news of the attack spread throughout the Rockford community. Many watched in disbelief as the horror unfolded. They remained in awe, struggling to understand how these acts of terrorism ever occurred.
This is incredible. It brings goosebumps to my skin, and you just got to stop what you're doing and just listen and watch.
And it makes me wonder how they hijacked the planes, what happened to our security.
Well, I feel angry that somebody, it's kind of like somebody hit us in the back when we weren't looking.
It's just crazy to think that something like this could happen. I mean, it's nuts, honestly.
Flags fly at half-staff around the state line, and many are praying for the lives lost in one of the worst American tragedies.
Rockford leaders expressed their sorrow over the tragedy and assured local residents they had no reason to panic.
There is going to be pain and hurt and sorrow that is going to be going on for weeks and months. And we need to be there to support by being a community that can stand up and support our neighbors throughout the nation.
As a precaution, emergency plans were put in place. Police officers stood outside government buildings. Federal and state buildings, the county courthouse, and the public safety building were closed to the public, but operations inside continued.
We certainly want to put our departments on the highest level alert. Not that we expect anything to happen from here, but we didn't expect it to happen in New York this morning either.
While many activities across the state line were canceled, most schools did stay open.
Well, we've also had a lot of state line residents share their reaction on our website forum. We'd like to share them with you now. One writer writes in, "I traveled internationally a great deal. I realize that we enjoy our freedom and expect to travel through airports quickly. But considering the current status of what has occurred in New York and Washington, we need to immediately set up security checks that are more comprehensive than what we experience today."
One more letter was written by Krista. She says, as a criminology graduate student, I question the type of justice that will more than likely be sought in this terrible tragedy. Do we really want to bomb what we think the attacker or the mastermind behind this attack is? Would that not just make us as bad as them? She adds, killing innocent people to get our point across is not the way to go. Or should we seek to bring criminal charges against the specific offenders?
Well, we asked you if you thought the U.S. should retaliate with military forces after today's terrorist attacks. 92% of you said yes, the U.S. should retaliate, and 8% of you said no, the country should not. Well, today's tragedy put in motion a statewide emergency plan. Local hospitals prepared in the event they might be needed. As New York shook and the nation reeled in shock, the call came out to local hospitals.
We were placed on alert at 9:40 this morning by the Illinois Department of Public Health to activate the network.
Rockford Memorial Hospital has been designated a pod hospital by the state emergency plan, meaning it's in charge of a communication network consisting of 60 hospitals in 10 counties.
Our job is to coordinate those hospitals and agencies within the Resource Hospital Network to ensure that they're prepared to respond in the event that we have to be called to a disaster.
All local hospitals reviewed disaster procedures and took inventory of beds, staff, and supplies, preparing for a possible disaster here or to help with the tragedy in New York or D.C.
It's something that we rehearse on an annual basis. It's something we need to be aware of. There's just a heightened sense of urgency now.
So far, no one has requested any local services, but administrators say the chance will increase in the days ahead.
I think there could be a little bit of a ripple effect where we may need personnel from across the country may need to be mobilized and go into those areas.
While hospitals are preparing to possibly ship out supplies or people, one local hospital is preparing for what could be shipped in. Many of today's injured are burn victims, and St. Anthony Medical Center houses a regional burn unit.
We need to be prepared for that possibility. We have a regional burn center, and as a result, there may be a demand for those services. We don't know.
Emergency helicopter service has also been restricted. The helicopters can only go up with permission at the city, state, and federal level. Administrators say the time from the initial call until the helicopter lifts off could be up to half an hour.
Hundreds of state line residents are stepping forward to help during this difficult time. The Northern Illinois Blood Bank was swamped with people wanting to donate. Since 9 o'clock this morning, dozens of people crammed into the waiting area of the blood bank, patiently waiting for their turn to give blood. Most say they want to do whatever they can do to help victims of the disasters.
The only thing I could do is do this.
to help those people who are hurt. I don't know what else I could do.
People are really trying to support the efforts to rebuild and just be of assistance in any way that they can. It's just really incredible to see that.
The blood bank is urging anyone who wants to give blood to call them at this number, 965-8751, for more information. The Red Cross, including the local chapter in Rockford, is in action following today's terrorist strikes. Volunteers are getting ready to be called to help out. Local officials say they should know by noon tomorrow if volunteers from the Rockford area will be needed and where they would be going. Those who might take part say there are some simple reasons why they chose to go.
If disaster ever hits here at home, that somebody would be there to help me. And so I enjoy reaching out to help others.
If you'd like to help out by giving money to the Red Cross, you can make a donation by calling 1-800-HELP-NOW. Or if you'd like to donate your time, you can call area code 815-963-8471, extension 12.
The Illinois National Guard, including guardsmen in the state line, say they are ready to help if the country needs them. The National Guard has an office in McChesney Park. The Guard says it's been in contact with both state and federal emergency management and defense operations. They say they are ready for any action that might be needed, but so far no action has been taken.
Air traffic has been halted all across the country.
As a result, 2 planes had to make emergency landings at the Greater Rockford Airport. The diverted planes came from United and National Airlines. Passengers say the change in plans left them frightened and confused.
I was nervous at first because planes don't turn around just after leaving. Normally that's an indication there's something wrong with the plane. There was some anxiety in the stewardess's voice on the radio I could see, so I was just glad when we landed safely.
Hotel accommodations have been provided for passengers who are not from the area. The FAA has ordered all outbound flights grounded, and the ban on planes won't be lifted until tomorrow at noon Eastern Time. Well, even though air traffic was grounded, Rockford's bus service to O'Hare continued. Bus service went on as usual at the Peoria Rockford Bus Company. The passenger load was light, and many of those passengers had to come back to Rockford.
Most of the passengers are staying on and coming back on that same coach, so they're coming back on schedules.
Some of the buses also transported those passengers stuck at the Greater Rockford Airport back to Chicago's O'Hare.
The shutdown of commercial flights is affecting UPS deliveries. UPS official Travis Spalding says the company does have contingency plans for situations like today's, but he says some delivery times will still be affected. Spalding says UPS will probably not meet all of its shipping commitments, but says it's working to deal with the situation. UPS delivers more than 13 million packages a day worldwide. Despite today's tragedy, the mail will be delivered. The U.S. Post Office remained open today and plans to open tomorrow. Carriers have been hitting the streets. Your mail will get picked up and be delivered, and post offices are open. But because air traffic has been halted, some mail will be delayed.
Well, Scott has a look at weather.
Yeah, quiet night across the area. Take a look at Storm Tracker Doppler Network right now. The nearest rain well northeast of Green Bay towards the upper peninsula of Michigan. Should be that way for much of the night tonight. 55, clear, not as cool tonight. A little bit of a southerly breeze that'll keep temperatures up as compared to last night. 82 tomorrow. Could be an afternoon shower or thunderstorm, especially north and west of Rockford. And then the 5-day forecast. Generally cooler conditions for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Maybe a few showers on Saturday. But right now, all in all, it doesn't look that bad. Highs generally in the 60s.
All right, thanks, Scott.
It has been a day America will never forget.
Terrorist attacks on both New York and Washington. Thousands are feared dead.
After a brief look back, we'll continue our coverage with ABC News.
Russian intelligence concluded very quickly, and they said this publicly, that the bombers were trained in the camps in Afghanistan, the camps that they've associated with bin Laden. So, I mean, that's the root of this common bond and common perception that that's an enemy there. The Taliban's history with bin Laden is very interesting. Moderate people from their version of the State Department have said bin Laden's not doing anything there, he's not carrying out operations. Yet when the U.S. asked them to turn him over, it was Mullah Omar, the leader of the Taliban, who said they would shed the last drop of Afghani blood before they would turn him over to the United States. They've been very protective.
Thank you, John. John Miller, who's been with us all day, and terrific help.